On this video, I had the opportunity to sit down and interview Mark Maginnis in McKinney, Texas, who recently retired and got into real estate and did his first deal to make a $25,000 wholesale fee. And here's the best part. It was an on-market deal. This is really cool. It was listed for sale with a real estate agent. He wholesaled it for $25,000, and I'm gonna break it down on this video. The amazing part is Texas is a non-dual agency state, which means technically you can't do the double dip strategy that I teach. So we're gonna talk about how he was able to do this deal anyways. So really awesome. Now, when I interviewed him, I only recorded his screen. I didn't record my screen on the back and forth conversation. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna put up a still image of me. You'll still hear my voice and you'll see the image of me, and then it'll cut to him when he's talking. And that's just how we're gonna do the video. But amazing content that you don't wanna miss. All of that and more coming up.
For a limited time, you can get a free copy of Jerry Norton's Data Cruncher software, which finds cheap houses in your area. Get it now at mydatacruncher.com.
So maybe start out and tell us a little bit of your journey. It's always fun to hear when you started. Usually most people, they start on a journey of like education, learning the business. At some point you have to transition into like taking action, making offers and generating leads. So tell us first a little bit about what your journey was like.
It was kind of a slow journey. It took a lot of time and I was kind of busy at the time. And, so I wasn't giving it, say, as much attention as I should or wanted to. Then kind of fast forward to last year in August, I retired from my company. I've been with them for 37 and a half years and decided, it's time for a different journey. Fast forward to say December, I binge watched YouTube channels. I watched probably 50 of your videos. So I signed up for Redfin, Zillow, Realtor.com, all that, things coming across my phone. I had a listing come across my phone. It was a Thursday morning and it was online for 28 minutes. Took everything I learned from your videos. I Googled the listing agent's name, find his phone number, called him up, 28 minutes being online, called him up. It was a 3-2, about 1,850 square feet. Keep in mind, Jerry, this was 5 miles from where I live. Sight unseen, I'm talking to this realtor. He's telling me about the property. Okay, so it's 269, and I already kind of ran the numbers because I watched your Redfin and your Zillow comps. Plus, I've already got the Flipster. So I ran comps, all that on my own already. Talked to the listing agent. What do you think I can do on this deal there as far as price? I had a number in mind. He came back and said, well, I think you can get this for 240. So I said, okay, I'm unrepresented. So could you represent me? He says, yes. I said, okay, that way you get both sides of the deal. You're going to make out better. And I'm like, okay, so put in an offer for 237. And, my thought process there was, okay, if the seller accepts, then, hey, I just, saved another $3,000 put in my pocket. Or if he doesn't accept, then, I kind of look at that as, okay, I let the seller have a win, so to speak.
That's because the agent said the seller will take 240.
Correct.
So you knew 240 was a number that you could get the deal done. So your thought process was, hey, let's go in at 237. If he says, yes, great, I just carved another couple grand off the deal. If he says no, then the seller will feel like he held firm and got what he wanted. And what city was this in?
McKinney, Texas.
Okay, now I put a post out. I'm not sure if you saw on YouTube and stuff talking about doing this interview. And it was funny. There's a lot of questions around Texas and dual agency. So how did that work out?
With this particular transaction, it worked fine. This particular agent's like, yeah, no problem. However, my goal is to put out about 5 offers a day. Some realtors I talk with, they're like, no, I don't do that. But then you ask them the questions like, okay, well, can you present an offer for me? And they say, yeah, they can. So I look at that option as, okay, if you're not going to take that 3% or can't take that 3%, then I'm going to take that into consideration on my offer price and kind of take it myself.
Yeah. Did you guys catch that? That's really big. So what he's saying here is he's saying in Texas, you can't do dual agents. Same with Florida and a handful of states, you can't dual agency. And just so everybody who's listening knows, dual agency is where the listing agent also can represent the buyer. So they can represent both sides and therefore get 3% or 2.5%, 3% and 2.5%, 3% and double their commission if they represented both sides. This is actually very common. Think about it. If you're an agent, you've got a sign in the yard at a house that you have the listing, they call the sign and they say, hey, I'm interested in that house.
the listing agent says, oh, great. Are you working with somebody? And they say no. And then the agent says, okay, well, I can help you. Let's set up a showing. Let's look at the house. If that buyer buys that house, the agent tries to represent both sides and then gets double commission, right? So that's something that happens very often. The challenge is there's a bit of a conflict of interest because who are you representing, seller or buyer? And so that's why some brokerages don't participate in dual agency, and then some states actually don't allow dual agency. There's a couple workarounds. One workaround is designated agency, where another agent in the same office can represent the buyer. So listing agent refers buddy in the office, gets a referral fee. So now again, what are we trying to do? Create a competitive advantage. Designated agency is not as good as dual agency, but it works. The same idea works. You're trying to incentivize the listing agent to work with you. And let's say that they split that buyer's agent fee with their buddy in the office, designated agency. Now maybe they're getting 4.5% on the whole deal instead of 6% or whatever, but they're still coming out ahead by working with you. So I don't care if you're in a non-dual agency state. This technique still works, which is build relationships with listing agents who get distressed properties, find a way to compensate them more so than they're going to get doing traditional real estate straight 3 and 3, and you'll create a relationship where that agent will then want to work with you ongoing over time. Now, what Mark did was a brilliant idea, and he says, okay, well, if you don't want the other 3%, you can't take it because you don't do a dual agency, you don't really have somebody you want to refer me to in your office that's going to benefit you, fine. Let's then just do a straight transaction where there's only 3% coming out of the deal. Since the seller's only paying 3% instead of 6%, that 3% is now negotiable in the price. So let's take a simple math equation, $100,000 deal. The seller going in is anticipating paying $6,000 if we're doing 3 and 3. So he's like, okay, I'm going to sell my house. I want $100,000. I got a listing agent getting 3, a buyer's agent getting 3,000. I'm going to pay $6,000. I'm going to net 94. Well, now since there's no buyer's agent involved, he's only paying 3. Now the same 94 is the same as 97. So now you can actually make a lower offer, get a better deal by subtracting out that 3% that the seller would be paying and now is not paying. And that's what Mark described that he's doing. Genius, brilliant idea. The seller, it doesn't matter. What really matters is what does the seller net at the end of the day after fees. So that's what really matters. And so Mark's playing that to his advantage in that situation. Does that summarize it pretty good, Mark?
Exactly.
But let me ask you on this one, how did that agent get both sides of the commission? Do you know how he did it? How did he structure that?
When I spoke with him initially, he said, I gave the seller a break. He gave the seller a discount of 1 point and only took 2%, but he took the 3% on the other side.
He did 3 and 2, but I know I'm going to get this question bombarded is how did he structure that if he's not allowed to do dual agency? One thing he may have done is he may have gone back to the seller and changed his arrangement from a straight listing agent agreement. Mm-hmm. And maybe he did a transaction coordinator agreement, which basically he says, I'm going to take a neutral position and not represent either party and just bring everybody together, get the deal done. And you're going to agree to pay these commission splits. Maybe that's what he did. Maybe that's how he did it.
Yeah, I'm not sure about all the details, but I did see on the settlement statement that he took 5%.
Okay. Now, the other thing is like, I've seen this a lot. So I've got students in Florida that do dual agency like crazy, even though you're not supposed to be able to do dual agency. So I don't know exactly what they may be doing. They may be changing up something in the paperwork. Maybe their broker doesn't care and they're doing dual agency anyway when they shouldn't be. I don't really know. I think from your point as the investor, here's the advice I would give. If you're in a non-dual agency state like Texas, like Mark is, or Florida, or one of the others, I would not change your script at all. I would say, hey, I'm an investor. I'm interested in the property. I'm unrepresented. I'll let you represent me. Let them decide how they want to structure the commission. Let them tell you, yes, I'll do that. No, I won't do that. Oh, let's do designated. Oh, let's do transaction. Let them decide. Just offer to them that you're unrepresented and you would like them to represent you so that it'll benefit them in some way. I think if you just offer that, like Mark, you'd be surprised how easy it is for that agent to figure out how to structure it so where he's winning. And that's exactly what I think, Mark, you're doing on your deals is you're just putting it out there and then you're letting that agent tell you what he's comfortable with on structuring the transaction for as far as the commission.
Exactly.
Okay, great lesson. I hope everybody gathered that lesson. I have so many people tell me, oh, it can't be done. It can't be done. It can't be done. You can't do dual agency in Texas. You can't do it. The whole model's shot. No, it's not. The model's not shot. There's so many ways around the non-dual agency. More than anything, it's about that relationship, and let that agent decide how to best structure the commission.
Yeah, exactly. I try to put out 5 offers a day. I mean, you don't know how motivated they are unless you put an offer out. You know, whether I think it's low or not, you don't know until you put it out there.
Yeah, I love that you say that. So that's something I profess like from the pulpit constantly is, guys, if you want to get deals consistently like Mark's doing now, where you're landing deals every month, I think that threshold of 5 offers a day is like the minimum requirement. And if you do, you know, think about that. That's 5 a day. That's 25 a week. That's 100 a month. If you're consistent with that, you will get deals. It's just a numbers game. You're going to land on that deal where all the stars align, seller, agent, everybody is all on board, and that deal comes together. But that magic doesn't happen unless you're in the game and you're consistently making those offers every single day, like Mark's doing. So thank you for sharing. That's really important.
So I offer 237. The seller says, no, I won't accept it, but he countered at 240. Okay, great. You know, still a great deal. So 240, lock up the deal. So I put down $500 earnest money deposit.
$500 earnest money. The agent agreed to that. Now, you know, earnest money is kind of tricky. If you're going to go after on market, earnest money is always going to be involved. Private sellers don't ask for it, but agents are always going to ask for earnest money. 500 is like on the low side, but typically it's 1,000. Maybe even more. Sometimes they want to do a percentage of the offer price and stuff like that. So you got to be prepared for earnest money. Earnest money is going to sit in escrow at title until the closing, which then gets reimbursed back to you. So if you go after on market, be prepared for earnest money. You only pay it when you get an accepted offer, and you get it back at closings. Now, if you go outside of your contract and then don't perform, you forfeit it. Another tactic that may work, not all agents are going to agree to it, is you could say, hey, I'll pay the earnest money after my 10-day inspection, not before, but after. If they agree to those terms, then what you could do is go find your cash buyer, get their earnest money, use their earnest money to pay your earnest money, and do all of that. That's kind of a little workaround to the earnest money problem.
You know, when the agent said, hey, I'll put down 1% EMD, kind of like what you were saying, which would be like, what, $2,400 in this scenario. I said, well, put down 500. What do I got to lose? He can say no, or he can say yes. And in this case, he said yes. And $500 I had to put down and save, what, $1,900 in my pocket.
Just by asking.
Correct.
Let me share a principle here that Mark's doing. You've shared 2 now examples of this. So here's the thing. When you counter or when you go in low, we have this fear that like, oh, if they say no, then I'm out, like deal's over. No, if they say, hey, I want 2,500 earnest money, and you say, I'll tell you what, I'll give you 500, and they say no, then say, okay, fine. It doesn't mean you're out. It just means go back and say, well, all right, I thought about it. I'll do the 25. But what does it hurt to just ask? So many people are just afraid to ask for that low thing, that lower earnest money or lower price or bigger inspection or longer close date. Just ask. And you'd be surprised how many additional terms that are beneficial to you can get on deals just by asking.
So, you know, I went online, say a month earlier on Facebook, like a Facebook group in Dallas, and said, hey, looking for investor-friendly realtor. And what I was looking for was comps. This is before I ever saw your video on how to run comps on Redfin, stuff like that. So I was looking for a property. I want to get comps on it. So I had, like I said, I had about 15 people hit me on Messenger, and I reached out to a guy via text. Hey, I got a property at XYZ address. Can you run me comps? So I never met this guy before. I just texted him. He's like, yeah, here's the comps, blah, blah, blah. He told me he was a realtor as well as he was an investor himself. Fast forward about a month later, I get this property under contract. I reached out to this guy, said, hey, I got a property for sale, McKinney, 3.2, 1,800 square feet, 265. And he's like, I'll take it. Send me the contract. Sight unseen. I haven't even seen the property yet, Jerry. I sold this thing probably 2 hours after I wrote the contract.
Tell me about your terms on your offer. Tell us about earnest money, proof of funds, and did you do an inspection contingency?
Actually, I took your offer sheet
Yep.
off Flipster.
But then did you actually do a real inspection or just buy yourself time to find a buyer?
You know, I sold the property before I ever even looked at it.
Yeah. To your agent buddy that you made friends with.
Correct. I never met the guy. First time I met him was when he came to look at the house.
Now, let me ask you a really important question, Mark, because this comes up to me all the time with on-market wholesaling. That agent investor, when you took him that deal at 265, it was listed for 269. So your price you brought it to him was only a couple thousand off of list price. Did he care that it was listed? Did he say anything about it being on market? Did he have any issue with that at all?
Well, he knew it was on market, but he knew it was a great deal. I was really concerned if he was going to say freak out. You know, 5 minutes later, I get an email back that he signed it. So he didn't care. He knew the market was just crazy in my city, let alone just Dallas in general.
So really, he's just looking at his numbers, his deal. Now, did you require him to put earnest money down on the assignment?
Correct, I did. I charged him $3,500.
Perfect. Good job. That's awesome. I feel like 500, 1,000, it's not enough because people will walk from 500, they'll walk from 1,000. They're not walking from 3,500 or 4 or 5. They're going to come through and perform. So that's an important principle, everybody listening. Get a big earnest money, non-refundable, no contingencies from your cash buyer. Lock them in. So if they don't perform, you keep their 3,500. So that's awesome. What's the ARV on this baby?
So he's looking to get 400 to 430 and put in 80 to 100.
Those margins don't get me super excited, but that's normal. That's what normal flippers would do. So he'll probably make 40, somewhere around there if he hits his numbers. You know, not a bad flip for somebody. How did the closing go?
My end buyer switched hard money lenders in the middle of the transaction. So I had to go back to the seller and say, hey, we had a change on funding and I need to get a 10-day extension. Now the seller got a little bit squeamish on me because, you know, he's like, okay, is this deal not going to happen? This, that, whatever. I told him, it's like, look, I'll give you $2,000 more earnest money. So he gave us 10 additional days.
So here's the thing about that, guys. If something comes up, like you have a hiccup on your side, your cash buyer or something's going on, one way to really solve that problem is offer more earnest money and make it non-refundable, just like you did, Mark. Like go back to the seller and say, hey, I need 10 more days. It's hard to just ask for something without giving that seller some assurance. So what you did to reassure the seller was said, look, I'll put another $2,000 down, which means if I don't perform, and we're only asking for 10 more days, if I don't perform, you're going to get my 500 plus now my 2,000. So that was enough to make that seller feel comfortable and go ahead and agree to extend the closing.
Correct.
Very good. Love that. It's so funny, Mark, because what you're describing here is like normal. Guys, this is how it is. It's not just getting a contract, not just getting a buyer, but actually getting your deals to the finish line. There's always a lot of things that are going on that come up, and you got to be able to just keep solving problems. And so it's just the nature of the beast. It's just what comes with the territory. You've got to be a problem solver and thinking of ways to work with these different parties and get everybody on the same page. Lots of communication. Everyone's got to finally come together for that deal to work at closing, because you got all your earnest money back and $25,000 as a wholesale fee. Yeah, right there. There it is. Assignment fee, $25,000. Woo! That is awesome. Guys, leave a comment right now in the chat and say, Mark, you are a flipping genius. But guys, I mean, this is so cool to do a wholesale deal with an on-market property and make $25,000 on your assignment fee. I mean, that is just so awesome. Congratulations, Mark. You are a flipping genius, guys. Make sure you put that in the chat for Mark, because that's just incredible. And I love that you watched my videos, you took action, you learned the scripts, you got Flipster, which gives you proof of funds, which is awesome. Guys, if you want proof of funds, we have a custom proof of funds. It's really awesome. And you just solve problems and you just work through it. Thank you for sharing that deal. Love how that all came together.